Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Weird Music. This is of course the show where we take a look at the weird and unusual albums of the world that are for whatever reason just different to the norm, right? we look at all sorts of stuff on this channel, and today we have something rather special indeed. In today's episode we'll be exploring a requested album, sent in by channel subscriber Zali Bucaro. And from what I gather, this is one of his absolute favourite albums. He seems to really enjoy shoegaze and has sent in a very interesting style of shoegaze here. Like this is going to be very interesting. This is an artist I'd only heard the name of prior to exploring this album. And we are of course looking at the incredibly sublime and dreamy soundscapes of Xuvetyn by Loveliescrushing. So, of course, let us ask ourselves, who are Loveliescrushing? Well, Loveliescrushing is an ambient shoegaze duo from East Lansing, Michigan, formed in 1991 by primary members Scott Cortez and Melissa Arpin-Duimstra. And their music can be classified as lo-fi ambient shoegaze for the most part, taking guitar textures from Scott Cortez and having them affected by loopers, EQ, reverbs to create these incredibly lush soundscapes that just feel like a sea washing over you entirely. All recorded through 4-track for that top-notch lo-fi effect. On top of it all though, blended right into the gaps between the layers and layers of guitar are these wonderfully ethereal, dreamy vocals of Melissa Arpin-Duimstra. And listening to this project, it's just a match made in heaven. Like, everything just blends together so perfectly in this phenomenally powerful album experience. So in today's episode, we're looking at the 1996 record Xuvetyn. This 18-track album is something of an overload of textures, drones, beauty and emotion. But it's so easy to just get completely hypnotized by it all and lost with it all. Like within the album you get these incredibly deeply textured songs like Valerian, Zivella Almanden, Blooded and Blossom Blown, etc, etc. And then between these you get these short interludes that feel like experiments using pedals and studio effects, which I feel give us a sort of insight into the musical process of Scott Cortez himself. You know, as an album, it's also very experimental, taking so many elements from varying genres like ambient, shoegaze, dream pop, etc, and it turns it all into this wonderfully cohesive and beautiful album experience. You know, the flow from track to track, it just feels incredibly seamless despite the songs not transitioning into each other. You know, it's a very interesting effect how, you know, with this album, you get those gaps between the tracks, and yet it all just feels like one massive 75-minute album experience that just sweeps you off your feet entirely. Oh wow, it just keeps you suspended in that incredibly beautiful, noisy dream world, like falling backwards into a kaleidoscope of some kind. Very surreal, yet there's something beautifully engrossing about the whole thing, and I'm really glad this was suggested, as I've been enjoying this album so much since I took the time to check it out. So Xuvetyn with this 18 tracks it's a very long album, clocking in at around 75 minutes as we've mentioned, and I feel like it makes it a bit of a beast to approach at times, you know? But regardless, it's all just so gentle and seamless and, you know, almost easy listening, despite being heavy and loud and, you'll know what I mean when you hear it. You know, there's something about music like this though. It just is asking for you to turn up the volume, just be played incredibly loudly, and, you know, give you that sense of being stuck in the middle of the miasmic storm being produced by the band. You know, it's incredibly heavy, yet it's also dreamy and sublime and gentle at the same time. And it surprises me how huge and grandiose this whole thing sounds, despite being a lo-fi 4-track album experience. It's a testament to Cortez's process though, his phenomenal experimentation and ability to just conjure up such a brilliant world of music through his experimentation. On the Wikipedia page as well for Loveliescrushing, you'll find a very apt quote from Cortez from a 2010 interview, where he explains his process in a bit more detail, with the quote being, "I use several loopers, EQ and reverb, mostly to manipulate time and sound. I also have had a few custom instruments to explore new textures. But the most important gear are my ears and brain. Without them, you have no imagination running the tools." It's a very apt quote, I feel, and I felt necessary to include it in the video, as it helps give a little bit of context to what we're hearing and experiencing. Helps sort of make sense of what's Cortez's process, and why he does the things he does, why he experiments with these things. And there's something oddly fascinating about that process as well. It feels as though Cortez just has this innate ability to explore the capabilities of whatever he uses. It mentions though that in this case he uses a Tascam Porta Studio, mostly for the production side of things. And but within that, he even with the homemade instruments as well, he's finding ways to find new textures, new sounds and stuff, and manipulate them to best express artistic creation and intention. Of course, though, I would argue much of this music would be moot though without the contributions of Melissa Arpin-Duimstra as well, though, whose voice just glides over everything you hear, drowned in the most ethereal and beautiful effects. It feels as much of an experimental instrument as the guitar layers themselves, and it's one of those perfect relationships between two forces. They just both join together in this wonderful harmony to create this phenomenal listening experience. And there's, listening to it all, there's this wonderful intimate beauty to the music on this album. And yeah, I have to say, listening to Loveliescrushing for the first time, I feel like the project name might be something of an onomatopoeia. It's one of those monikers that perfectly captures the sentiment and concept of the music itself, with it feeling like love and beauty in this incredibly powerful blizzard. There's love and intimacy there, but you have to experience it under the heavy weight of those incredibly loud layers of instrumentation. So yeah, Xuvetyn it's a brilliant place to start with this band, if you're only just hearing about them for the first time. I find it to be a bit of a difficult album to go into song by song, as I've mentioned, the whole thing just seems to blend together into this one cohesive album experience, and I find it very difficult to pick apart different songs in it. There's a lot of very good ones in there, but it feels like it's all about the album itself, the whole 75-minute experience. And yeah, the sum of the wholes, arguably, the whole thing start to end kind of thing. But it's one it's long, but it's one that's so lovely and swathed in so many colours and sounds that just wrap around you in this mystical and magnificent way. And before we finish though, I did want to mention that although I hadn't explored their music prior to, researching and making this video, I had heard of Loveliescrushing before, as there is a sort of secret hidden release on Richard Chartier's record label Line Imprint by Loveliescrushing. And it was a reworking of their 2007 album Chorus, titled CERWTF Chorus Redux. And it sees the project utilising only the vocal layers to create this immersive experimental album experience. And maybe we'll explore it in a future video, perhaps. We'll have to see. But for now, I have to say, I'm so incredibly hooked by this project. I'm very grateful for having had it suggested for this series. So thank you very much there. Thank you. And with that, though, I feel like we've come to the end of today's episode of Weird Music. Xuvetyn it's a wonderful, dreamy, romantic album. It's You know, it's very loud like shoegaze music, but also very subtle like ambient music as well. And there's such a phenomenal weight to the music that it's hard not to just get lost within it all. Like, you just get completely thrown by it and absorbed by it. It's so good. And, you know, when I listen to it, I just want to sit back and listen to the whole thing and just watch the world go by. So I would like to once again thank Zali for suggesting this album for today's episode, and I would like to remind you, yes, you watching right now, that if you have any suggestions for future episodes of Weird Music, then suggest them in the comments. I will see if I can get around to it at some point if I'm able to write something about it, I guess. For now, though, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode of Weird Music. I wish you all the best. Take care and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.